Well, good to see you guys. Thanks for being here tonight. Always great to see you. Hope you had a great day, man. I had an awesome day today, but lunch at our house, and it was just so fun. We are all ready for Christmas at my place. Debbie and I decorated for Christmas like 2 weeks ago. I got Christmas music on in my truck every place I go. I love Christmas, and we're in this Christmas series that we're calling Merry Conversations, where we're talking about how, sometime during the holidays, you'll be standing around with some people. You're making small talk and things are kind of awkward sometimes. You're talking about the weather. You're talking about football. You're talking about these, awesome sugar cookies. You're debating whether the best Christmas movie of all time is Christmas Vacation, Home Alone, or Elf, which one. And then the person you're talking to kind of pulls you off to the side and they throw out a question or they make a comment, and all of a sudden the conversation has gone like to another level. For instance, say you're at a Christmas party, maybe office get-together, neighborhood gathering, or maybe a family dinner, and this person pulls you aside, and as you talk, you can tell that they've probably had a little too much to drink, and it's not the first time that you've noticed them being that way. Or maybe someone starts telling you about the situation they know of in someone's home where they're experiencing all kinds of dysfunction, and they say that person's home could really use some boundaries. Or perhaps a family member kind of takes you out on the back patio, because you can do that in December in Southern California, and they start talking to you about this guy who just hates family gatherings, has all this resentment rolling around on the inside, and he says he can't even hardly look at family members. And they all preface what they're telling you by saying, I have this friend. I have this friend who has a drinking problem. I have this friend who could use some help with their codependency. I have this friend who just can't let go of their bitterness and forgive. And because they sense that there's something different about you, like you're a safe person, they begin to open up and tell you more about this friend who feels like they're absolutely stuck. And they talk about how their friend would love to know the kind of hope and the kind of peace that you seem to have. They would love to experience the joy and the confidence and the purpose and the passion that they see in you. But their friend has this thing that just keeps tripping them up. They just can't break free from it. Now, if I am in that merry conversation, and I have been in a bunch of them in my day, here's what I'd do. I'd listen really, really well. I'd even encourage them. Well, tell me more about this friend. And as they keep painting this picture of this person who they say feels like they're like drowning in a sea of dysfunction, maybe addiction, maybe some kind of pain, I would lovingly tell them, you know what, man, that sounds a lot like where I used to be. So here's what I would say to your friend. I tell them what I've discovered personally, that there is a God who loves them, and he really wants to get close. I mean, that's what Christmas is all about. I would tell your friend that they need to get to know him, because in him there really is this good news that brings great joy to all the people. There really is hope for everyone. In fact, I'd even tell your friend that they ought to humble themselves and admit that they have a problem and ask that God for some help. And they even ought to get into like a community of other people who are trying to get well as well and trying to go in the same direction. They could start working some helpful steps. And I'm telling you from experience, in the process, they will eventually come up to breathe deeply for the first time in maybe a long time. That's what I'd tell your friend. Now, I'm not a big acrostics guy, but a few years ago, I took the word breathe, and I took some of the basic principles from the 12 steps and what we teach at Celebrate Recovery and kind of smashed them together into an easy-to-remember process that I believe everybody needs to embrace and work. And I'm going to show you that acrostic in just a second. But again, I'm telling you from experience that anybody who will sincerely ask God for help, and they will start working these steps, not as a checklist, but as a lifestyle, then they can actually overcome any of what the Bible calls strongholds in their life. You see, the truth is we are all in recovery from something, right? And we all want to walk free, and we all want to breathe deeply. So how about we just kind of drop the whole I got a friend thing, and let me just ask you, what is it that keeps you from really walking free? I mean, what is it that you struggle with? Is it anxiety, worry, panic? Maybe it's anger issues, some bitterness rolling around on the inside of you. Maybe some abuse stuff you're trying to get over. Maybe for you it's an addiction like gambling or alcohol or drugs or pornography, or maybe a sexual addiction, or maybe it's bigotry or cynicism or lying. It could be some grief you're having to deal with, or maybe you went through a divorce, or maybe there's criticism you're having to deal with, or maybe you've even become kind of a critical person. Maybe it's perfectionism, maybe it's procrastination or codependency. Maybe you're a control freak. Are you a workaholic? Do you overspend? Do you overeat? Do you undereat? Do you have some relational wounds that leave you with some trust issues? Do you ever lose it with your kids? You ever know something's wrong, but you just do it anyway? Do you ever say, man, I got to clean up my language, but you still just spew out profanity? Do you ever find it hard to go to sleep? Do you ever find it hard to get out of bed in the morning? Do you wrestle with depression? Do you struggle with envy, with discontentment, with insecurity? Do you have a memory that haunts you? Maybe you have some unresolved guilt that paralyzes you. If you answer yes to any of those, welcome to the human race, because we all need recovery in some way, unless, of course, you have lived a flawless life. And if flawless life describes you, you're probably more screwed up than the rest of us in this place. So I just want to show you a verse of Scripture that has infused hope into my life so many times and in the life of so many other people as well. And this is God himself talking. He says this in Isaiah chapter 57. He says, I've seen what they do, but I want to heal them anyway. I will lead them. I will comfort those who mourn, bringing words of praise to their lips. May they have abundant peace, both near and far, says the Lord, who heals them. See what God says? He says, I know all about what you've done. I know all about what you struggle with. And if you're feeling lost, man, I want to lead you. If you're feeling sick, I want to heal you. If you're feeling overwhelmed, I want to comfort you. If you're all anxious and stressed out and worried and confused and scared, I want to give you the peace that transcends all human understanding. If you feel like you are absolutely drowning, I want to rescue you. I will help you break through the surface and breathe. So let me just give you that little breathe acrostic, and I want to briefly touch on each step so that you can pass this along to your friend. I'm going to come back to these first two in just a minute, the first two steps. The first step is this. It begins with the letter B of the acrostic, breathe. It stands for blessed are the broken. Blessed are the broken, because this journey toward freedom has to begin with honesty and humility and a sense of brokenness. Step two, the letter R in the acrostic, is ready to surrender. I'm ready to surrender. You say, you know what? I am broken, and I am entirely ready to trade in my attempts at self-help and ask for help from a God who has a power greater than myself. Now, I want to come back to those first two in a few minutes, take a deeper dive. But just take a quick look at the rest of these. The third step, the E in the acrostic, breathe, stands for evaluate my life with fearless honesty. It's like we talked about. If you were here like a month or so ago, we did a little series called Under Further Review. Remember the football series we did? Where we talked about how you ought to go to the replay monitor like those NFL referees, and you say to God, God, search me, oh God. Let me take a closer look at some of my character defects. I want you to take me to the root of my problem, because I always know that you make the right call. And I know it's playing out in my life. The way it's playing out is just symptomatic of a deeper issue. So God, I'm just asking you, take me there. And this becomes a lifestyle of confession and honesty and transparency as you take what's called a fearless moral inventory on a regular basis. Then step 4. That begins with the letter A. As far as it depends upon me, I need to start making my relational world right. The A stands for making amends. Making amends. You start listing some of the people that have hurt you, or maybe people that you have hurt, and whenever it's possible or profitable, and sometimes it's neither, you go to them and you just try to make amends. You just refuse to let bitterness eat your lunch. You refuse to allow someone who hurt you to keep on hurting you for 10, 20, 50 years of your life. You forgive like Christ has forgiven you. You give up your right to get even, and you just let it go. I got a really good buddy right now who is 3 years clean from drugs and alcohol and porn addictions, been working all these steps. When he got to the make amends step, he sat down and made a long list of people that he'd hurt in his life and people that had hurt him along the way, people he had resentment toward, and so on. He went back to where he grew up, went back to family members that he had hurt along the way, and asked for forgiveness and apologized for things he'd done. He went to an abusive stepdad who had hurt him deeply and made amends there. He even went to cemeteries and had to search for and find these tombstones and stand in front of those grave markers and just forgive people who were no longer around. He even went back to a guy, and the guy was totally clueless about this. He went back to a guy that he stole money from when he was a teenager, and he said to the guy, here's what I stole from you 25 years ago. I'm giving it back to you with interest over the last 25 years. It was so freeing for my buddy to do this. Now, again, it may not be possible or it may not be profitable. You don't want to go back and stir up a bunch of stuff with people who have moved on. For you to show up like totally out of the blue, it may bring some unneeded stress and drama into their new life and into their new family. And it may not be even possible. In that case, you write a letter that you never send. You go to a gravestone. You say what you need to say. You let it go. You forgive. You make amends. And then you start this lifelong process that begins with the TH of the acrostic. You start thinking a whole new way. You change the way you think. Check this verse out from Romans chapter 12, verse 2. It says, don't copy the behaviors and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you what? The way you think. Then you'll learn and know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. Anybody besides me discovered that when you give your life to Christ, there's not like a delete all button in your head? You still got some of those old thoughts, right? Because you've lived a certain way for a certain number of years. You've got old thoughts that just got to go. And that's why you got to do the work of renewing your mind. It says that God will transform us, but we have to change the way we think. That's the way we cooperate. Now, some of you know, I've talked about this before, how I love to do remodeling projects. I love to take old junky houses and tear them up and put them back together. I love that stuff. But the one thing I hate about construction, the worst thing about any construction job, stripping wallpaper. Anybody with me on that? It's like awful. In fact, I think that's what hell's going to be. Like stripping wallpaper for eternity. That's what it's going to be in an outlet mall. That would be total hell for me. But what I'm saying is you got to re-wallpaper your mind. You got to intentionally start stripping off some of that old stuff and replace it with new stuff, with good stuff, with fresh stuff, things that are true and noble and right and lovely and pure. You take God's word and you hide it in your heart. And as you do that, man, you are re-wallpapering your mind with really good stuff. And then the last lifelong step, and you don't wait till you've arrived to start doing this. The E stands for encourage others. With my life and with my story. You just start living beyond yourself. You give yourself away. You serve other people. You use your story of your rescue. Use your life to help other people. I mean, who better to sit down with someone who's going through a divorce than someone who's been there? Who better to help someone with a struggle with codependency than someone who's struggled with it themselves? Who better to help someone with a struggle with alcohol or drugs or pornography or an eating disorder or maybe the emptiness of materialism than someone who struggled with that stuff? Last weekend, I was teaching at Eastside Church down in Anaheim, where I teach regularly as well. And I read this passage. And when I read it, it was such a great reminder to me personally, because it's God talking about us living a selfless, other-centered kind of life where we serve other people. He talks about that. Then he says these words. If you live like that, if you live selflessly, then your salvation will come like the dawn, and your wounds will quickly heal. Your godliness will lead you forward, and the glory of the Lord will protect you from behind. I read that and thought, wow, there is healing for yourself by not focusing so much on yourself. You live a life that encourages other people, and you pour your life back into them so they can know hope as well. You see, gang, we are all in recovery. And this is a pathway that all of us have to walk. It's a lifestyle that all of us need to embrace. We all want to breathe deeply and freely. Now, I want to go back and I want to break down those first two just a little bit because it's the ball game. I really need an entire series to do this, and I would really encourage you to check out Celebrate Recovery. We call it CR on Friday nights. Juan Palomino leads this awesome ministry where we talk about these kind of things every week and get into a safe community with people who are working through some of this stuff. It is so helpful and so good, and freedom starts to come. But for the short time that we have here tonight, this might at least give you a game plan to start personally following, or seriously, even pass it along to a friend who might open up to you during the holidays. So let's go back to that first step. Blessed are the broken. That's the first step toward freedom. In fact, the first words that came out of Jesus' mouth when he started his ministry, when he stood up on a mountainside, he did this, what's now known as the famous Sermon on the Mount. He said, blessed are the broken. Blessed are the busted. Blessed are the poor in spirit, those who recognize their spiritual bankruptcy. Blessed are those who will drop the denial and say, wow, I need God's help in my life. I was teaching this out at CR just a few weeks ago. I took this picture in Jerusalem last year when I was over there. It's a picture of a place called the Pool of Bethesda. It's like a community pool there in the center of Jerusalem back in Jesus' day. And this was, they ranked different sites there in Jerusalem. It's like an A site, a B site, a C site. This one was an A+. Like, this is the way it was. This is a great archaeological dig. This is what this place looked like back in the day. And people would come and people that were sick, people that were lame, people that were blind, they would lay on these porches around this pool hoping that they could get into the pool because there's a mythical illusion that there's healing waters in this pool. Well, there's a story in John chapter 5 how this guy, he'd been an invalid for 38 years, was lying there by the pool, and Jesus happened upon this guy. And this is what it says in John 5:6. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition a long time, he asked him, you want to get well? And Jesus, he heals the guy. It's a cool story. But I used to think when I read that chapter, Jesus, that's such a dumb question. Of course the guy wants to get well. He's been 38 years, he's been sick. But after all these years of ministry working with all kinds of people, I've discovered it's not a dumb question. Because some people know they have a problem. They know that things could get so much better, but they don't really want to get well. And sometimes it's all about image management that keeps us from admitting we have a problem. We'll paint on a smile, say, I'm okay, I'm fine. In fact, nobody's ever going to know that I really struggle with this. And below the surface, and we're just drowning. And a lot of times, especially for us guys, it's pride. I can't show weakness, man. Reaching out, it's a sign of weakness. I got this. I can beat this thing on my own. Most times it's fear. As strange as it seems, some people fear change more than they fear the damage that the addiction or the hurt or the pain is doing to them and the people around them. As miserable as we are, we would rather wear that old habit like a comfortable pair of old shoes than to go through the challenge of breaking in a new pair and walk in a brand new direction. You see, it's not a dumb question. Do you want to get well? And unfortunately, it is human nature that most times you and I won't change until the pain becomes greater than the fear of the change. Too many of us won't change when we see the light. We have to wait till we feel the heat. When the marriage starts to fall apart. When you get a phone call in the middle of the night, or you wake up on somebody's bathroom floor or in the ER or maybe even a jail cell. So here's what I would say to your friend. I say, man, listen to a person who loves you. Listen to the God who loves you. Blessed are the broken. Save yourselves and others around you some pain. Humble yourself, see the light today, and start your walk toward freedom. Now, some people say you have to hit rock bottom. Let me tell you, no, you don't. No, you don't. Now, you do have to humble yourself, and you do have to possess a sincere brokenness and say, enough, no more pretending, this is insane, I do have a problem, it's out of control, I need some help, I can't do this on my own, I want to get well. But please, 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 you don't have to hit rock bottom. You don't have to hurt yourself and a whole lot of other people who love you anymore. See the light today, humble yourself, admit your need for help, because blessed are the broken. That's what I'd tell your friend. Then in your humility and your brokenness, you come to someone who has a greater power than you. And that's what step 2 is all about. You're ready. In your brokenness, you're ready to surrender to that power. You know, I love the words of a once very, very proud, out of control, self-centered guy named Paul. Look what he wrote in 2 Corinthians. He said, we felt we were doomed to die, and we saw how powerless we were to help ourselves. But that was good. That was good. For then we put everything into the hands of God, who alone could save us. I've been learning through the years, there is power in powerlessness. When you and I will humble ourselves and admit our own weakness, that's when God's strength has the permission to flow through us and help us break through the surface and start to breathe. He alone has the power to help us walk free. And here's a really cool thing to me. There's only one thing in the universe that is stronger than the power of God. You're saying, come on, bro, there's nothing stronger than the power of God. Oh, yes, there is. His desire to love you. His desire to help you. His desire to use his power to heal you, to pull you out and lead you. Bill W., who was one of the founders of AA, referring to his and others' miraculous relief from alcoholism, he once wrote, we found that God could and would if he were sought. We found that God could and would if he were sought. And gang, if that's true, as millions of addicts can attest, then isn't it also possible that God can't and won't if he's not? You see, I think God gives us a choice through the double-edged sword of free will. It's why Jesus asked, it's up to you. Do you want to get well? And the readiness to surrender our will to the leadership and the supernatural power of God, I'm telling you, is the pathway to freedom. I read a book a while back by a researcher, a PhD named Gene Twenge. The book is called Generation Me. It's all about the disturbing trend of narcissism in our culture. By the way, you know how a narcissist changes a light bulb? They just stand still and let the world revolve around them. That's how they do it. She writes this in her book. Our growing tendency to put the self first leads to unparalleled freedom, but it also creates an enormous amount of pressure on us to stand alone. This is the downside of the focus on the self. When we are fiercely independent and self-sufficient, our disappointments loom large because we have nothing else to focus on. Man, I'm telling you, I read that and thought, fiercely independent, self-sufficient, with only myself to focus on. Wow. Sounds like a friend I used to know. You guys remember those movies with Jim Carrey and then Steve Carell, Bruce Almighty and then Evan Almighty? I used to be Mike Almighty. Favorite topic to talk about? Me. Favorite song? Toby Keith. I want to talk about me. I want to talk about I want to talk about number one, oh me, oh my. My favorite characters in the movie? The seagulls in Finding Nemo. Mine. Mike Almighty, the center of the universe. And that's why God says, you shall have no other gods before me. Although he literally is the center of the universe, God's not on an ego trip when he says that. He just knows that when anything, especially ourself, sits on the throne of our life, we're going to be leading ourselves away from the source of life and down the road of self-sufficiency, pride, emptiness, and a boatload of problems. It says this in the big book of AA. It says selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. And to get well, we had to quit playing God. To get well, we had to quit playing God. I taught this little equation out at CR a couple of weeks ago. It goes like this: self-deception plus self-reliance equals self-destruction. And I'm telling you guys, that math works every time. Because what's the common denominator there? Yeah, self. Self. So this is a step that you take where you realize the universe does not revolve around you. You acknowledge your self-centeredness. You step out of your self-reliance and you quit playing God. You come down off the throne and you surrender your life and your will to the care and control of the one who really is the center of the universe, the one who is the healer, the rescuer, the Prince of Peace, Jesus Christ, the lover of your soul. And you know what I've learned? It doesn't take a gigantic faith. It just takes a little bit. I mean, that's how it began with me. Just a sincere willingness to believe that there was a powerful, loving God who was much more capable than Mike Almighty was of getting his life back on track. That's all he needs. It's just a little bit of faith. Now, I know that some of you may be like many of us who said, yeah, all right, I hear you, but there's no way I'd turn my life over to God. I don't even know what God's like. And sometimes, childhood family issues get transferred onto God. Like if your father was maybe, disconnected, uncaring, or maybe you had a parent that was really hard-nosed and someone to be feared, you tend to think of God that way. I've got a friend named Russ. He's been sober over 30 years, and he's sponsored all kinds of people. Great big guy, like a big old teddy bear dude with this abnormally thick, snowy white hair. Just makes me sick every time I see the guy. But he talks about how new guys would come into AA and they would say like, hey, they get to this step and go, there's no way I'm turning my life over to God. I mean, he's mad at me. He's disappointed in me. He's disgusted by me. And you know what? If I turn my life over to him, he'd ruin it and I deserve it. And Russ would tell him, you need to fire that God. You got the wrong God for recovery. Because the God who operates here is loving and forgiving and honest and will always be there for you. I had a God like yours when I first came in here. I had to fire that God and get a new one. Now, please don't misunderstand me. There really is just one true God. It's just that the God many of us perceive is not the true and living God. We need to fire our misperceptions about God. And gang, that's one of the best things about Christmas, is that it blows away those misperceptions of God. He is a God who comes near. He is a humble God. He is a God who cares. He is a God who is not just loving, but he is love. He became one of us. You need to see the truth about what God is like. Just a sampling, just a few verses. Psalm 103 says this about God: the Lord is like a father to his children, tender and compassionate to those who fear him, respect him. He knows how weak we are. He knows that. He remembers how he created us from dust and he blew breath into our nostrils. He knows us. And our Father loves us with a love you can't get anywhere else. It's an unfailing love. Psalm 130, verse 7, hope in the Lord, for with the Lord there is unfailing love and an overflowing supply of salvation and help and second chances and grace. Isaiah 43, this is God himself speaking. It says, when you go through deep waters, I will be with you. When you go through rivers of difficulty, you will not drown. When you walk through the fire of oppression, you will not be burned up. The flames will not consume you, because I will be with you. My powerful right hand will guide you. You see, you need someone stronger than yourself. You need someone bigger and better and wiser and smarter than yourself. You need someone to help you, to pull you out and walk with you. You cannot do this by yourself. Keith Miller is a Christian writer who went through a 12-step recovery program on his own. And he writes in his book, A Hunger for Healing, as he observed the 12-step meetings. He says, I watched as this quote-unquote higher power revealed itself to various people in the group. Its personality always had certain definite familiar characteristics. And I knew that if everyone were like making up their own higher power, this wouldn't happen. It couldn't. The personality of the higher power revealed in those meetings was always loving and forgiving. gave people however many new starts needed to get into recovery and get well, was honest, moral, courageous, and strong, but never abusive, and was always loyal beyond belief whether people deserved it or not. In fact, as I looked carefully at the higher power in the 12-step program, I realized that it had a haunting family resemblance to Jesus Christ. No accident. He is Jesus Christ. And if you will surrender your will and your life to his loving care and control, your sin, which is a really huge deal, will be forgiven, and you'll start this process of becoming a brand new person who can actually walk free in the power and unfailing love of God. Diane has been working these steps, and she's been living this lifestyle I'm talking about for a while now, and she is walking free, and she is breathing deeply these days. Check out her story.
Hi, I'm Diane, and this is my real life story. I have been attending Real Life since 2011. I grew up here in Santa Clarita. My mom took us to church every week. Looking back, I see that I never really had a personal relationship with Jesus. I was just kind of going through the motions. I did have an older brother who struggled with addiction and just behavioral issues. My mom obviously wanted to continually give him grace and help him through his issues, but my dad was kind of just fed up. And so I kind of played middleman because I wanted everyone to be happy. It was difficult. And I think I was almost seeking the attention that I wasn't getting at home because everyone was so focused on my brother and his issues. And I started going out and partying a lot. I saw myself going down a very similar path that he had. And turning to the things that he turned to, I got introduced to alcohol, and I made romantic love a huge idol in my life. Like, those were priorities 1 and 2, were alcohol and dating, alcohol and attention. The more that I started drinking, I got really sick. I actually had 2 seizures from drinking. So it got to the point where I was taking sick days after events where I knew I was going to be hungover, where I was going to be having muscle spasms, where I was going to be dizzy. I was literally planning my life around opportunities to go out and drink and be social and get attention. That's really when it hit me that I might have a problem. Someone in my life at the time, a friend, recognized the anger that I was carrying around. He said, "You know, I look at you and I see myself before I got help." That really triggered something in me because it made me really look at my life and take stock of what was going on. During my journey at Real Life, I was still doing the party scene and still kind of living the double life, but I was trying to make something better. I thought church would magically change me if I walked in. It didn't. So I went to a First Steps meeting. I found out that they needed sign language interpreters. I'm like, okay, I majored in sign language. I can help there, right? But one weekend when I had been interpreting, there was a guest speaker. He was talking so passionately about this program, and I actually had to switch mid-message because some of the stuff that he was saying was hitting so close to home. I was getting emotional. So I went home, I went online, and I found out that we did have Celebrate Recovery at Real Life Church. So that Friday, I went. Within 60 seconds of walking onto the Real Life campus that night, a girl my age was waiting at the bottom of the stairs, and she walked up to me and just gave me this huge hug with this huge smile. She encouraged me to go to the Newcomers 101 class after. I just sat in that room and I cried because these people were searching just like I was. They were hurting just like I was, and they were Christians. For years, I had been hiding what I was struggling with from my family, from people that I went to church with. I was keeping it all to myself because I was so afraid to be judged. I felt safe talking about what I was going through for the first time. I didn't just stop, I healed, and it made such a huge difference in my life. If I could go back and talk to the Diane in 2011, I would say, sit up and pay attention when Rusty or Brennan or whoever it is comes out on stage and is going through the announcements, because the magic recipe was when he was going through the announcements, going to First Steps. I got plugged in. Church got smaller. I started forming relationships. I did the baptism class in 2012. and baptism is not a magic spell that I profess my faith and I'm fixed. It did invite the Holy Spirit into my life, and it did guide me, and it guided me to CR, which they mention almost every week. And I finally started listening. I took their advice. It's not just them standing up there and holding a card. It's genuinely them saying, sitting in the seat is not going to work. Sitting in the seat did not get rid of my temptation, did not get rid of my lust, did not get rid of my desire to drink, did not get rid of my need for validation, my need for worth. It was taking the first step, going to the meeting, learning about real life and what are we about, and getting plugged in. And God will open doors for you. He'll have people come alongside you and encourage you. He did for me, and that's what the church is. It's not a building, it's the family, it's the people, and that's what saved me.
You know, maybe as you've been sitting here tonight, you just sense that God's been trying to kind of pull you aside and have a merry conversation with you. And we thought we might ought to give an opportunity to make that a two-way conversation. Sometimes you don't even know what to say back to God when you know He's speaking deep to you. So maybe just let the words of this song form a prayer. And let's just say this back to God. I'll invite you to stand right now, and let's just say these words to God.
Down on my knees again, surrendering all, and find me here, Lord, as you draw me near. I'm desperate for you, I'm desperate for you. I surrender, and I surrender, and I surrender. And I want to know you more. I want to know you more. I surrender, I surrender. I want to know you more. I want to know you more. And like a Jesus, breathe within want to know you. I want to know you. I surrender. I surrender. And I want to know you more. I want to know you more.
Yeah, I've heard it said that the greatness of a man or a woman is in direct proportion to the measure of their surrender. The way up is through humility. Healing comes when we surrender our weakness to the strength of God. And tonight, if you need to pray with somebody, like Sean said, there's places out in the lobby you can grab a pastor and say, I need to pray with somebody tonight about anything going on in your life. And I would encourage you also to grab some invites on the way out when you do have those conversations during the holidays. Say, hey, won't you come to this church with me? I think you'll find hope there like I found hope. Let's pray together. Father, I thank you for the way you give us this good news that does bring great joy for all the people. But there's a God who came near, a God who wants to walk with us, a God who knows what we do, but he wants to heal us anyway. I thank you for caring so much about us that you want to walk with us, and you made us to do that. I thank you for the way you've just broken down so many strongholds in this place and so many people's lives. People like Diana and countless others. God, you've healed us, and we're so grateful for it. And God, we acknowledge tonight that we're all in recovery from something, and we just desperately need your power to flow through us during this week so we can be the kind of people you want us to be and the kind of people that we want to be. We want to walk free and breathe deeply. And I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. Hey, guys, have a great week. See you back next weekend.